Hey everybody, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, G1. As always, hope you're having a good week. I have had a slow week with nothing really going on, so I've been watching and reading everything about the Epstein files. Well, I won't say everything that's out there, but a whole bunch of it that's out there. So we're gonna continue on with that theme from last week's episode, and that's what we're talking about today. So I said last week that we should kind of separate the files into different categories of information, with most of it falling into the box of nonsense, disinformation, or at least unsubstantiated stuff. The other bin, however, is stuff that is real. Where we're going to focus on that this week because there's some really disturbing and enlightening information in there, and it's building a much bigger picture, and that picture is just as ugly and evil and dark as we thought it was, but it also extends into a lot of places that people may not have thought about. So let's kind of get into this. First off, let's set aside the information that is real, but is in some kind of code that we don't really know the meaning of for sure. And I'll get back to that stuff shortly. Let's begin with this stuff that's just right out there in the open in the emails. To begin with, Epstein, without a shadow of a doubt, was involved with, and may have in fact been a major cause of, the financial collapse of 2008 while he was working at Bear Stearns. That's an entire show worth of information to get into. You know, the hows, the whys of that topic, and I don't really have the bandwidth to go down that rabbit hole, so I would point you to others who've already done that work and probably have a better take on it, or a better way of outlaying it than I do. Ian Carroll has a video on that. Go check that out and kind of get into that. It's deep stuff, very intricate with the whole credit default swaps and all that kind of stuff. But go into that. Epstein was a major player in that. Also, we learned that Epstein and others, including Steve Bannon, were involved with the creation and early management of 4chan, the social media site. Epstein and Maxwell were seeding information into that site to kind of drive conversations. Maxwell was apparently one of the early moderators on 4chan. And so if you kind of look at a lot of the conversations that were taking place and kind of, where all that was going, and look at the timing of that, remember 4chan kind of came around about that time or a little after the Occupy Wall Street movement. That's when a lot of these sort of alternative social media sites kind of got going. Very interesting stuff that kind of came out of that. So, what was their play there? What were they trying to do? Again, a whole nother rabbit hole. We learned that Epstein lived at the Vatican for a short while, which is, again, a whole different can of worms there. We get confirmation kind of involved with that because of some of the people they mention that they talked to at the Vatican. We get information that Epstein and Maxwell were interested in underwater exploration off of the coast of Cuba via Maxwell's company, which was called Terramar. They were in contact with a researcher, female doctor or scientist who was doing research explorations off the coast of Cuba underwater and found underwater ruins. Basically, they're down there looking for evidence of Atlantis. And again, that's an entire series of shows that has already been done by the Dark Journalist, so I would point you to his series. In fact, the latest episode that he did last week was on this very topic, where he pulled that information out of the Epstein files. Go watch that. Fascinating stuff. we learned that Epstein was a prolific gamer and was laundering money through World of Warcraft. The online economy of that game allows you to buy and sell things and then turn that back into money. And so he was running some kind of operation there where they were laundering money. He's paying people to play, and they were building up credits or whatever. I don't know exactly how the economy on that site works about how they're doing it, but they were essentially farming it and then selling it back into the real world to turn it back into real money. Totally wild. We learned that he was involved with the creation of Bitcoin. There's some speculation that he may actually have been the elusive and unknown creator of Bitcoin. If you don't know that history, Bitcoin has someone who said they created Bitcoin, and they have a pseudonym, it's a Japanese name, that they kind of hide under, and they kind of came into the spotlight, created the Bitcoin, and then disappeared, and they don't really speak or comment or do anything. They just, like a ghost, poof, gone. It may have been Epstein. I don't think that's really the case. I think that he was no doubt kind of picking around the edges of it at its inception at MIT, and he was no doubt advising some of the people who were involved with the coding and creation of that in that early development of it. But I don't think he's the actual single person that kind of came up with the idea and put that out there. I think it was another one of his technology ventures that he was digging into and he was getting into. Some of that I say because he later kind of comes to steer people away from cryptocurrency. He says it's too easy to pump and dump, so it's too easy to get caught up in something and lose your money. Of course, it's also possible that he just wanted everybody in Bitcoin and not, looking away from the competing cryptocurrencies, so it wouldn't dilute what he was involved in. But I think he saw that for what it really was. He recognized it because he's a scammer, right? And so he saw it immediately and was like, no, this is a trick. I'm not getting into that. That's a big problem. And he decided not to get, at least openly involved with it. So interesting stuff there. And there's more and more here that is just kind of odd stuff, and a lot of it is pretty mundane. But it paints a broader picture of who this guy was. And even if we don't get into what we're going to get into, we can already see that this guy is a certain type of person. He is unethical, and then he's a wide range of interests that kind of touch a lot of aspects of modern life. He's looking for every technology edge, everything that gives him some kind of vision, some kind of view. He's into astrology and predictions and all these kind of things. He's looking for just every edge, every hedge that he can find in whatever area he has to get into that gives him information about the future and what people are doing or what they're going to be after, what they're going to be interested in. It's all about what he might put his money into or what he might get his hands into, how lucrative it might be, whatever he can get involved in. That's what he's interested in. This kind of personality is very susceptible to corruption. They're going to justify every means to get to the desired end. And that's kind of what gets us into the dark stuff. I think it's very easy to see why that route became open to him and became acceptable to him, why he chose to go down that. He's addicted to influence and leverage. So he wanted to meet as many people as he could that he thought would give him, an edge and bring him something more. He would bring these people into his circle, and if he judged that he could influence them, or that they might later buy him influence, then he would work that influence. And I said this on a previous program that, everybody has a price. So for most people that he's around, that price is going to be fairly low. Okay, let's face it. If you just kind of imagine yourself, if you're just a researcher someone who's developing some new technology, some new procedure, something like that. And this guy shows up and says, hey, I'll fund your research for a cut of the profit. That's likely all that it took to get the deal done. Somebody showing up saying, I'm going to give you money. And, these people are looking to get their products off the floor there. That's likely what it took for most people. But some obviously have a higher price, and it might have gone a bit further and looked more like, hey, come to this party, spend time with some really pretty girls, and maybe get drunk or smoke a little weed or whatever, take a little cocaine, whatever. Maybe they'll sleep with you, these kind of things. And we're not even necessarily talking about anything illegal there, even though I said maybe some of them had to have some drugs or something like that. But it's not necessarily illegal for him to have a party and have some pretty girls there, something like that. It's just very manipulative, okay? And again, it's a breeding ground for corruption. That kind of thing, even though on the surface it might be legal, there's something illegal going on behind it, something unethical, something immoral all behind it. But I think it gets to the point, it kind of gets that point across that the bigger the fish, the bigger the bait had to be. And people who have their own influence and their own leverage, they didn't have to go to Epstein to get that. They had their own parties. They had their own stable of women and all these kind of things, and their stimulants or depressants or whatever. They could get all that on their own. They didn't have to go to Epstein for that. But it's those that have it and want more, that wasn't enough. They want things that they never had. Epstein could deliver that. He was trading experiences to people so that they would come to him with information and opportunities. And many of these people, as we saw, very high level. Arms dealers, heads of state, informants, intelligence people. They come to him with information and opportunities, and he gives them experiences. And sometimes those experiences had to be more and more odd and extreme. That's where we get to the child abuse, the trafficking, the other things. Now, I say other things because a lot of stuff has been hinted at, and we'll get into that in a second. But at this point, it's still mostly speculation. As I said in the last week, we read through these emails, though, and we're getting more and more confirmation that those speculations are spot on, or at least really, really close to the target, because it's some really, really odd stuff. And maybe I give these people a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt, but I don't want to be pulled in by something that comes out later to be proven false, or to be proven to be something not what we thought it was. I don't like being manipulated. I don't want to be tricked and fooled. And so I don't want somebody to be using this to get something over on me, if that makes sense. So I'm a little bit more hesitant to just come right out and call it what it really does look like. But that hesitancy is going away the more that we dig into that. Because let's look at Pizzagate for one. The emails basically proved that Pizzagate was real. The things that we thought about Pizzagate were real. At least at its core, it was real. Okay? And again, I believe that story was bombarded with a lot of disinformation that could be discredited so that it would be dismissed. Oh, don't pay any attention to that. That's an online conspiracy theory. They put enough stuff in there, enough garbage in there, like I said before, to make it look like it was fake. But it wasn't. The core of the story was true. You could be attacked and deplatformed if you even mentioned it a few years ago. And now we're seeing that this circle of people that Epstein was involved with, and John Podesta, the others mentioned in that WikiLeaks drop of Podesta's emails, they're using this coded language to refer to something. This food language like pizza, grape soda, shrimp, beef jerky, it's all code, and it means something very, very dark. It can't be anything else, okay? Because adults do not discuss food in emails in that kind of context, the way that the people in these emails are discussing it. Why are two adult males talk? Hey, let's have pizza and grape soda later. I've never said anything like that in a message to a friend or family or anything like that. There's always some lead up to that. There's always some context around that kind of discussion that makes that make sense by, in that context. In and of itself, by itself, the way it's used in some of these emails, kind of out of the blue sometimes, it doesn't make sense. I might put something like, hey, what do you guys want to do later? You want to try to get together for dinner? Sure. Where do you want to go? Well, what about this pizza place, this restaurant over there? Let's go get pizza there. Cool, but let's meet there. There's some context that makes all of that innocuous, okay? That's not what's in these emails. The context is off. It's just not really right. Now, of course, there may be some completely innocent use of those words at some times. Maybe scattered in there are some messages where it does make sense. Okay, well, you hear they're just talking about going to get coffee or whatever. But the bulk of it, the sum total of it, tells you that you're seeing something on the surface that means something completely different to those who are reading it. The targeted person of the message, they understand what it means. And everybody's speculating that it's children or other things. And I think we have to entertain that speculation, even if we're being skeptical, because some people have overreacted and fell for obvious disinformation. It's easier for us to just assume that they're talking about young people and that they're trafficking them and that they're killing them and eating parts of them. It's far safer to assume that and to just go on the presumption that these people are evil, inhuman creatures. We can sort the innocent people out later. There may be some innocent use of words there, but it's suspicious enough that we should have these people in interrogation rooms demanding answers and demanding evidence. You show me what you were talking about here. Is there something missing from this conversation? Show me a receipt where you went to a restaurant after you had this conversation and you had pizza. I want to see that. What restaurant did you go to? Further questions that contextualize this information, because otherwise it looks really, really, really suspicious. Because this is where we get into the problem, because law enforcement has kind of different modes of operating depending on who you are. If they know you're a nobody, then you take a ride downtown and you get put in a room to answer those kinds of questions. But if they still think that you're the person that they're looking for, you're getting booked and you're facing charges. If they know you have a big name, if you're somebody, you got a ton of money, well, you don't even get asked those questions unless they have a lot of evidence to support it. They got to have more to go with than just emails. You don't even get asked the questions. And they do that because they know that people with money have lawyers and they don't answer questions without the lawyers being present. And when the lawyers are there, all the tricks, all the things that cops do normally to kind of break people down, all that stuff doesn't work. The lawyer doesn't let them answer those questions. So they have to dot every T, cross every I, and all that good stuff to make sure that they have enough evidence to justify asking those questions. But that's kind of in normal times. I think we're beyond that. There's enough public demand for this. There has to be enough outrage and screaming in the streets to get these people to move their ass and take a risk, okay? You only have to break one of these people, give them immunity, whatever, to start turning the others and walking up the chain to get where you need to go. It only takes one crack in the wall. Something's got to happen. Something's got to make that happen. Because as we saw yesterday, Pam Bondi is not going to do this. She is a complete failure. She needs to be fired. But she's up there toting the line of her handlers, even though it's making her look like a complete fool. I do think that I think she's going to be fired soon. I do. I don't think this is going to last, regardless of whose bidding she's doing. I don't think Trump is going to let her embarrass herself like that, because it embarrasses him. He's not going to let that go on much longer. Regardless of what happens on that front and the moves that the administration makes, this is not going away. It's not going to be something that's easily swept under the rug. People are gravitating to those details, and they are seeing how horrible it is. It's just not something that can be simply dismissed. I think that it has gained enough momentum and enough mass to it that simply trying to hang on to some of that disinformation and say, oh no, we can dismiss this. That's not going to work. I think this has gotten to be too huge. Like I said, these emails where they're talking about things, there's no way that this is disinformation. This is them emailing each other. That stuff is out of control. It's beyond easily being dismissed. We're seeing more and more memes online to the effect of, cannibal pedos are walking free and I'm going to court to pay a traffic ticket. That is a situation, okay? That is a huge indicator. When people have completely lost faith in the government, they will replace it with something else. And that new thing can be really good, way better than it was before, or it can be really, really bad. However it's done, though, the process is very, very painful. However it ends up working out, it's a very painful process. But what we're seeing, in my opinion, is the powers that be, the ones that are pulling the strings, the ones who want you distracted by this horror, as I said last episode, they want you distracted while they make their escape. I think they're pulling themselves out of the fire and kind of running for cover here. They're more than willing to sacrifice some of the low-hanging fruit. Hey, these people, we can cut them loose. They're not one of us. We can push them out and let them have that. Let them eat them while we get away. They don't care about what the country looks like after it's over, because if that happens, if things go down like that, they're going to be somewhere else, and it's going to mean opportunity for them wherever they land and set up shop anew. We have got to find a way to punish the wicked and get justice, but do it in a way that does not destroy our civilization in the process. It's an awfully fine mess that we've gotten ourselves into. We let these things go on for far too long and didn't punish people when we had the opportunities. We didn't hold people accountable. And now we all may have to pay the price. That is all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the Mothership. And I will see you on the next episode.